let's just do some backtracking. How did you get interested? How did the connection with George Gershwin start?
Well, I was about 14 or 15 years old. I was still in knickerbockers. And I was playing at the Palace Theatre in an act called Gus Edwards' Kiddie Review, and I was one of the kiddies. And Paul Whiteman's orchestra was playing at the Roxy Theatre a few blocks up. And when I wasn't actually doing my own show, I'd go up to the Roxy and I'd play outside the stage door, hoping someone would say, "What a talented kid," and bring me in to play for Whiteman, and someone did, his saxophone player, Frankie Trumbauer. And he said, "Paul, listen to this kid," and I played Poet and Peasant. And Whiteman said, "Let me hear you play the Rhapsody in Blue." Now remember, I was 14 or 15. I couldn't handle the Rhapsody in Blue. Technically, it was absolutely beyond me. But I couldn't admit that to Whiteman, so I said, "I don't like Rhapsody in Blue." He turns to a young man I hadn't noticed before, and he said, "How do you like that, George?" And that's how I met Gershwin.
So it's a long, long history, a long friendship as well?
Well, later on, someone gave a farewell party for me. C.B. Cochrane, who was more or less the Ziegfeld of England, was coming back to England, having produced Yvon Printemps and Pierre Franet in New York, and he brought me back to England with him, and C.B. Cochrane coming back with a mouth organ player was news. And I stayed in England until I married in 1938, and then I went to South Africa, and that was my first trip to Australia. And then we settled in Beverly Hills and lived there quite a while, and that's when I got to be really friendly with George and Ira Gershwin. Of course, I knew Ira a lot better because he lived a lot longer. George, well, I don't know if you ever heard that great line that John O'Hara wrote. He said, George Gershwin died July the 11th, 1937, but I don't have to believe it if I don't want to.
What was it that attracted you specifically to the harmonica away from sort of the classical piano?
Well, I wanted to be a classical pianist. I'd heard Rachmaninoff when I was about 5 years old, and that's what I wanted to do. But I know my temperament is such. I'm a lazy man. I procrastinate. I never would have practiced the required number of hours to become a first-class pianist. Now, the mouth organ came into my life by sheer accident, dumb luck. I saw a paragraph in a newspaper that a mouth organ band was being formed, and out of curiosity, I went down to see what it was like. The man who was forming it was from Germany. He impressed me as being a natural teacher. I liked him. I bought a mouth organ, I got in his band, and I found I had a facility for playing it. I had gone around to Howard Street in Baltimore, which was the street where they had all of the piano shops, and I tried Steinway and Chickering and Esty and Steve and Kimball, and I came to Mason and Hamlin. I was hitting the keys of that, and I liked it, and the man came up and said, "Get away from there, you dirty little boy," which I was, believe me. 3 or 4 days later, I was having breakfast. Bell rang. My mother went to the door, and she came back and said to my father, "Lou, there are 2 people here delivering a piano." The man had taken my word for it, and my father called him. He said, "Are you mad, sending a piano in the world of a 9-year-old kid?" And Mr. Levin, I remember his name, he said, "If he thinks that's the best piano, I have to agree with him. I think he should have it." My father said, "I'm a plumber. I can't afford a grand piano. What does it cost?" He said, $2,500. He said, "Well, that's way out of my range." And Mr. Levin said, "Could you afford 50 cents a week?" And that's how we paid for the piano. Now imagine that happening today. It wouldn't happen.
How did these various sort of rock stars and musicians from very varying backgrounds relate to the music of Gershwin? It's a very interesting concept.
Well, first of all, the only 2 that I had met were Sting and Elton John, and they agreed to come on the record. And then we had the great good luck of getting George Martin to produce. Incidentally, he is one of the greatest gentlemen I've ever met in the business. Oh, he's a wonderful man. In fact, at my 80th birthday party, I said that I thought the word gentleman had been coined to describe George Martin. Now, when I say that I got Sting and Elton John, George rounded up all the other artists. And people were fighting to get on. There were so many that we didn't have room, for example, for Bette Midler, for Leo Sayer, for Bob Geldof, for Boy George. And as it is, we have 18 tracks on the record, And I asked George Martin, would he conduct the Rhapsody in Blue while I played? And he said, Larry, I'm a lousy conductor. I said, George, I know you're a lousy conductor, but I would be honored if you would conduct the Rhapsody in Blue for me, which he did.
Tell me about the concert tonight. Mainly the material from your latest album?
Yes.
Who's playing with you? And what is going to be the highlight?
Well, I've got Izzy van Randwyk singing. In fact, Izzy's greatly responsible for the record being made, because Izzy introduced me to a friend of hers, Jonathan Shallett, who somehow slid into being my manager, and he organized this record. And then the duets I do with Izzy, when she sings I've Got a Crush on You, the way she sings it, I feel she really has, and what's more, I don't blame her.
With a new step every day, with a new step every day.
The thing is, I love my work. I really love it.
Yeah.
And I know that I do it well. It's a great joy to be able to make a sound and know that you're making a beautiful sound. And there's always new things to do in music. There's always the curiosity of what's happening tomorrow. And I'm interested in a hell of a lot of things. And in my life, I've gotten into an awful lot of trouble because of my curiosity about things.